Discover 3 sinister and terrifying true blackout horror stories that will haunt you forever. The storm hit hard that evening, winds howling like banshees, lashing sheets of rain against the windows. In a cozy home in a quiet suburb of Chicago, Mike, the level-headed father, sat with his nurturing wife Sarah and their spirited 15-year-old daughter Lily. As the news spouted warnings of power outages, they settled in for what they hoped would be a relaxing evening by candlelight. "Nothing like a good storm to make you appreciate home," Mike joked, trying to lighten the mood. But the flickering flames barely illuminated the unease creeping in. They laughed about storing coffee and snacks, while outside, the storm raged like an angry giant. Then, out of nowhere, Mike's phone buzzed violently against the wooden table, breaking their momentary cocoon of laughter. "I know your secrets," it proclaimed. Blood drained from Mike's face as they shared a nervous glance. "Just a prank, nothing to worry about." But as the storm thundered louder, messages poured in, each one darker than the last. "You should have listened to your neighbor." A chill ran down Lily's spine, turning the once comforting atmosphere into a pit of dread. Outside, the wind howled ominously, mingling with an eerie rustling from the backyard. "I'll check it out," Mike said, masking his rising panic with forced bravado. The moment he stood, fear constricted in Sarah's chest like a vice as she followed his movements. His heart pounded as he crept toward the back door. Shadows danced, darting like restless spirits in the night. And then he saw a figure lurking just beyond their fence. Mr. Johnson, their neighbor. Usually odd but harmless, he had always waved at them with a crooked smile. "Just checking on you," he said last time. But now, with the darkness swallowing the street whole, it felt sinister. Just then, the house creaked a loud groan of wood against wood, as if the home itself was warning them. Mike hesitated but pushed the door open, a blast of cold air hitting him like a wall. The once familiar yard morphed into a landscape of shadows, oppressive in its silence. Could he trust Mr. Johnson? Rumors had always swirled about him, whispers of odd behavior that the community chose to ignore. He stepped out, trying to shake off the dread, trying to keep his family safe. But with each cautious stride, the atmosphere thickened, as if the very air was alive, tightening around them. The whispers inside him grew louder, they were no longer just being paranoid. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they raced toward the safety of their street, the twinkling lights of their neighbors' homes flickered ominously, blending into the backdrop of dread. The familiar houses transformed into dark silhouettes, looming like towering sentinels watching them run. They could hear the rustling of leaves close by, footsteps trailing too closely, as if an unseen presence had awakened in the dark, eager for company. When they reached Mr. Johnson's porch, dread gripped them tightly. The door hung ajar, a hollow openness that seemed to beckon them closer. There he stood, a silent figure framed against the doorway, eyes glinting with secrets that rang alarm bells in Mike's head. An uncanny feeling washed over them, the realization that some masks hide horrors deeper than they would have ever imagined. Panic tangled with their breath as they exchanged apprehensive glances. They hadn't just stumbled into Mr. Johnson's territory, they had crossed an invisible line, revealing secrets buried beneath. Years of suburban bliss. Would they escape the clutches of this familiar stranger, or had they drawn the attention of something truly terrifying that would unearth their darkest fears? The air crackled with tension, the thunder rumbling as if in anticipation of what was to come. Mike gulped, the icy grip of fear wrapping its fingers around his heart. He took a tentative step toward Mr. Johnson, whose smile was now twisted, almost feral. "Mike, Sarah, I was wondering when you'd come by," he said, each word coated with an eerie sweetness that sent shivers down their spines. Is everything okay, Mr. Johnson? Lily's voice trembled, her eyes wide with fright. Mike shot her a warning glance, yet she seemed pulled in, like a moth to a flame. Everything's just fine, Mr. Johnson replied smoothly, his head tilting slightly. But something in the shadows behind his form shifted, a darkness slithering across the porch. Their unease escalated, prickling along their skin like electric shocks. Suddenly, the power in their neighborhood flickered, a jarring darkness swallowing everything. The candle light barely held on, casting long, ominous shadows that twisted like grotesque figures trying to escape the corners of their home. Panic ignited inside Mike. "We need to leave," he hissed, grabbing Sarah's arm, but Mr. Johnson stepped forward, his movements unnaturally fluid. "Oh, I wouldn't rush off yet. You see, I've got something to show you." The gleam in his eyes suggested the promise of secrets too venomous to uncover. Before Mike could react, a sharp metallic sound sliced through the silence behind them. The creaky gate had swung open, revealing a dark figure standing in the pool of shadows. It was the neighbor from 2 doors down, Mrs. Andrews, draped in a tattered, blood-stained nightgown, her hair disheveled and wild. "Get out," she croaked, voice cracking with desperation. "Get away from him. He's not what he seems." The intensity of the moment exploded. The three of them turned back to Mr. Johnson, whose smile widened disturbingly, glistening under the occasional flashes of lightning. "Ah, Mrs. Andrews, always the vigilant guardian." Lily's breath hitched, her instincts screaming at her to run. "What do you mean? What secrets?" But before a reply could form, Mr. Johnson's voice dropped to a whisper, wrapping around them like a serpent. "You're part of this neighborhood now. I've been waiting for your invitation." With dread pooling in their stomachs, Mike felt the walls pressing in, a suffocating weight forcing him to stay. He struggled to break free, heart racing. But the shadows seemed to weave tighter, the air crackling with raw energy and something even darker. "Let's just go home," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as she edged backward. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, casting flickering illumination across Mr. Johnson's porch, revealing something inhuman lurking just out of view. It was a creature tall, lean, with limbs that twisted unnaturally, as if it had been molded from nightmares. Mrs. Andrews screamed, "You have to fight. Don't let it take you." But in that moment, Mike felt the ground beneath their feet shift, an invisible anchor tethering them to the spot. The dread morphed into something primal, as realization dawned with a chilling clarity. This was no longer just a storm. It was a force intent on claiming them. "What have we done?" Mike whispered, terror gnawing at his resolve. In the heartbeat of silence that followed, they stood frozen, caught in a web of fear, the storm crying out around them. Then came another frantic knock echoing from the front door. "Help! Please help me!" This voice, too distinct in its desperation. The shadow of their choice hung heavy in the air, and as Mike's pulse quickened with the weight of the moment, dread fought against impossible hope. Would they save a stranger or risk the wrath of what lurked behind them? The pounding on the door came again, frantic and desperate. They were caught between two horrors, the shadow looming over Mr. Johnson and the pleading voice outside. Mike's heart raced, a drum of paranoia echoing in his ears. What choice could possibly be right? "Mike!" Sarah shouted, pulling at his arm. Her eyes were wild, reflecting the candle's flickering light. "We have to get out of here." The ghastly figure of Mr. Johnson stood unyielding, a leer spreading across his face. "You've got no idea what you're involved in, do you?" His fingers curled, tapping against each other too smoothly, too methodical. The creature shifted slightly behind him, stretching its long limbs and letting out a low grunt that sent shudders through Mike's bones. "Let them in!" Mrs. Andrews screamed. "You can't trust him. Don't let him take you." Her eyes were wide with fear, reflecting a paranoia that seemed just as palpable as the darkness surrounding them. The knocking turned into an urgent pounding now. It was a heartbeat, frantic and alive. Mike felt the weight of the choice crash down on him. What if it's a trap? He whispered, glancing at the apparition behind Mr. Johnson, which twitched with a life of its own. Better a trap than this. Sarah yelled. Her voice was tinged with what felt like desperation, pulling him toward the door. Now, why would you think that, Sarah? Mr. Johnson asked, his voice laced with mock innocence. You think the world out there is any kinder? You'd be safer with me. A sense of dread boiled inside Mike. The knife edge of horror pressed down hard, strangling his resolve. In that moment, the pounding from the door seemed to resonate with the storm outside, loud, fierce, demanding. Mike stuttered, taking a step towards the door. The shadows around him shifted. Mrs. Andrews' face was an image of terror, a warning written in the lines of her face. Then, without warning, Mr. Johnson lunged forward, movement like a strike of lightning. You don't want to make a choice you can't take back. He yelled, his voice probing, almost hypnotic. The creature behind him twisted in response, its eyes glistening like black abysses in the half-light. Mike stumbled back, hesitation coursing through him like ice water. They were losing time. Whatever was lurking behind that door was growing restless. Help us. Again, came the voice, filled with panic. The shadows cast by the flickering candles danced crazily, seeming to claw at them as the storm echoed around their world, a chaos of nature and nightmare. Suddenly, the front door burst open, revealing a woman soaked from the rain, her eyes wide and frantic. Please. It's coming. You have to, but she didn't finish. A crashing sound erupted from the porch, as Mr. Johnson whipped around, his disguised menace slipping for just a moment. No! He bellowed, the sound shaking the ground. The air thickened with an unbearable anticipation. Mike felt it then, a shift in the atmosphere, the weight of all choices beginning to spiral out of control. The room felt suffocating, the air slicing through them like knives. This was where they'd find out who they truly were, who would leave and who would be left behind. As Mrs. Andrews shouted something incomprehensible, the creature let out a deafening screech that rattled Mike's bones. He looked toward his friends, desperation clawing at his throat. Would they join the chaos at the door or let the shadows take them? And just as the thunder lit up the sky, revealing the horror behind the mask of civility, the lights flickered out once more, plunging them into suffocating darkness. Don't look back. Sarah screamed as they felt the first pull from the void, something reaching, grasping. Would they fight for their lives or become just another lost story in the dark? The darkness closed in like a vice, crushing the air from Mike's lungs. Panic clawed at him, a beast with sharp claws. He could barely make out the figures around him, shadows merging and growing on each other. Just run. Sarah's voice sliced through his fear. He didn't need to be told twice. They surged toward the chaos of the open door, the rain-soaked woman still on the threshold. But the storm outside raged, and the space felt alive, thrumming with a dark energy. Mike felt it wrap around him, thick and suffocating. Get inside. The woman shouted as the pounding of the storm mixed with the dark whining of something sinister just behind them. A shiver shot up his spine, urging him forward. They scrambled through the doorway, but Mrs. Andrews hesitated, her eyes darting wildly. We can't leave her. She cried out, fear cracking her voice. No! Mike shouted, too loud. The shadows flickered, and he felt that pull again, something insistent, urging him back. We can't. In that instant of hesitation, the thing behind Mr. Johnson broke from the darkness along with the fury of the storm. It lunged forward, its elongated limbs snapping like branches underfoot. A flicker of lightning illuminated its grotesque form, jagged and unnatural. Mike stumbled, feeling Sarah's grip tighten on his arm as they tumbled into the safety of the house. But their refuge wasn't a haven, it morphed into a maze of terror. The walls pulsed, shadows stretching and bending in unnatural ways. It felt claustrophobic, as if the very house was alive, breathing down their necks. Close the door. Mr. Johnson thundered, panic breaking through his facade. But his eyes glinted with something more glee. The otherworldly screech rumbled through the room, sending the lights flickering again, illuminating the faces of terror and doubt. What is it?" Sarah whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. "I don't know," Mike choked out. The shadows pulled closer, clinging. "But we need to move." The woman was still standing by the door, a silhouette against the rain, but something about her was off. "Help me," she gasped, a hand reaching out, slick with rain and something else. A glint of metal caught Mike's eye. "Stay back," he shouted, instinctively stepping away from her grasp. "Mike, we can't leave her." Sarah's voice trembled. But Mrs. Andrews echoed his thoughts, "We don't know who she is." The storm raged on, but it was neither outside nor in. This was a storm of their choices, threatening to engulf them whole. "I'll go," Mike exclaimed, too soon, driven by raw instinct. He edged closer to the woman, heart pounding in synchrony with the thunder. "Don't trust her," Mrs. Andrews yelled, her voice cracking. Suddenly, from the shadows, Mr. Johnson drew closer, eyes glimmering with anticipation. "It's already too late for all of you." The weight of his words crashed down, and an overwhelming dread wrapped around them. The flickering lights buzzed with anticipation, as if they knew the revelations that were about to unfold. "What did you do?" Mike felt the air crackle with tension, the room thickening like smoke. Everything shifted, the walls seemed to lean in, eager to hear the secrets about to spill. The shadows began to swirl, gathering themselves into a whirlpool of darkness, pulling at the edges of their reality. "Don't you remember?" the woman rasped, a hint of recognition lacing her voice. "Remember what?" Mike's heart raced fast enough to explode. "Welcome back to hell," she sneered, as the shadows finally closed in, swallowing them whole, and in that moment, they knew that whatever lay ahead would test the very limits of their existence. What did she mean? What awaited them in the deepening darkness? The darkness surged around them like a living thing, twisting and writhing with a life of its own. Mike felt claustrophobia grip him like a hand around his throat. He blinked rapidly, but even the flickers of the failing lights could not pierce the depths of the shadows surrounding them. "Get back!" The woman's voice was sharp, demanding. It sent an icy jolt through him. He turned, but the shadows drew closer, lunging at them with hunger. The flicking bulbs buzzed erratically, casting a sporadic light that painted grotesque shapes on the walls, twisted versions of themselves reflected back with wide, moonlit eyes. "Stay with me." Sarah grabbed Mike's arm, her grip tight, as if she could hold him together through the unraveling horror. "What does she mean, welcome back to hell?" Mrs. Andrews demanded, her voice rising in panic. "We never went to hell. Didn't we?" Mr. Johnson's laughter was jarring, a sound that didn't belong in this world. The corners of his mouth stretched, revealing teeth too sharp, too pointed for a human. "You've been here before. You just don't remember yet." The air thickened with dread, and Mike's throat constricted. Memories danced on the edge of his consciousness like mirages, flickering just out of reach. How could he remember what never happened? "Focus," he commanded, forcing himself to breathe, but a prickle of despair settled in the back of his mind. "We need to escape." "Escape?" The woman stepped forward, her face shadowed but eyes glimmering like silver coins. "There's no escaping what you brought upon yourselves." "No." Sarah's protest broke like glass underfoot. "We didn't." The shadows answered by swirling faster, whispering their own dark tales. Mike's heart raced as he fought against the gnawing feeling that they had all been here before. His mind was a jigsaw of broken pieces, memories that were both familiar and foreign, while the oppressive darkness clawed at his sanity. "What do you want?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the depths, swallowed by the void. "We want what's ours," the woman said, her smile widening, revealing a maw that seemed to stretch too wide for her face. "You think you can escape the consequences of your actions? This is your reckoning." Thunder roared outside, shaking the very foundation of the house. Cracks spidered along the walls as if they were meant to let the shadows seep in. Each movement around them felt like a countdown, the air pregnant with tension. What actions? Mike's frustration boiled over, desperation clinging to his skin. Don't you see? Mrs. Andrews shrieked, her eyes darting. We can't keep fighting each other. We need to stand together. Together? Mr. Johnson sneered, his eyes glowing with malicious satisfaction. You've divided yourselves since the moment you stepped inside this cursed home. Remember your words. Your doubts. Your betrayals. They brought you here. The shadows responded to his voice, forming shapes that dipped and twisted. A vision flickered before Mike, scenes of betrayal, anger, and fear-chilling fragments that made his stomach churn. Friends turning on friends, alliances disintegrating. He gasped abruptly, the truth settling in like a weight pressing down on his chest. No, we can't be held accountable. We didn't mean to. A chuckle rang in the air, both cruel and mocking. Intentions are meaningless in the eyes of retribution. Then how do we stop it? Mike turned to Sarah, his voice softening. By facing the truths we've hidden, she whispered, eyes wide with fear, but holding a flicker of resolve. If we confront, lightning split the night sky, illuminating the grotesque figures surrounding them, revealing sharp teeth in twisted grins. It was time to choose: face the shadows and whatever secrets they buried, or let the darkness claim them entirely. As the swirling mass encroached, Mike steadied himself, heart pounding, knowing it was not only their lives at stake, but their very souls. Let us confront them together, he said, holding Sarah's gaze. We can't let them win. As they moved toward the shadows, a chilling realization loomed. The darkness wasn't just outside, it lurked within each of them, waiting to be unveiled. What horrors would be revealed when the last walls fell? Would they emerge whole, or shattered beyond recognition? The shadows lunged forward, as if responding to the pulse of dread that thrummed through the group. They pressed closer, a swell of darkness pressing against their sanity. Mike tightened his grip on Sarah's hand, feeling her pulse quicken, matching his frantic heartbeat. Don't let go. He urged, his voice cutting through the air, desperate for connection amidst chaos. They took a hesitant step forward, the oppressive weight of darkness pushing against their bodies like thick fog. Hold on. Mrs. Andrews screamed, her voice cracking. We can't split apart. Together, remember? But the trust needed to unite was frayed. Panic flickered in the eyes of each person, betraying the illusion of strength. Mike glanced sideways at Mr. Johnson, the once familiar face now twisted by fear and something darker. Something that seemed to feed off their despair. Show us. Sarah shouted, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. If we've been here before, let us see it. We'll confront it. The shadows twisted, rippling as if processing her words. An inky vortex spiraled before them, revealing flickering images, vivid flashes of betrayal. A childhood memory played where laughter turned to screams. Friends pushing each other away in arguments, eyes filled with fury, moments of weakness made manifest. Mike recoiled as memories both felt and forgotten washed over him, each image piercing his mind like nails. Betrayal. Anxiety. Choices he made that cut deeper than wounds. They had come seeking peace from the echoes of their past, but now, the past clung like a spider's web, entangling them further. Step back. Mr. Johnson yelled, eyes glimmering with a desperate edge. It wants us divided. No. Mike shouted over him. We're stronger together. With a trembling resolve, he turned to face the swirling black mass. Show us. He called into the void, his voice laced with defiance. Show us what we're running from. The shadows writhed violently, and an enormous shape loomed, engulfing them in utter darkness. Faces emerged, twisted and distorted, familiar yet unrecognizable. There were lost friends, lovers transformed by bitterness, shadows of relationships strangled by regret, all pulling at the fabric of their realities. A cacophony of whispers filled the air, snatching at their sanity. "You left me, you betrayed us, you didn't fight for me, stop!" Sarah cried, pressing her palms to her ears, but the voices seeped through, burrowing into their minds, each one a jagged memory that forced them to confront their failures. "This is insanity!" Mrs. Andrews shouted, now trembling. "We can't stay here. We need to escape." "Escape?" The woman's haunting voice returned, echoing with enticing malice. "You think you can flee from yourselves?" Bolting to Mike's side, Sarah's voice shook. "We have to break the cycle." Together, Mike agreed, and his heart pounded louder, igniting a spark of unity amidst despair. "We'll face our shadows. We will not be afraid." They moved closer, the grip of the shadows tightening, but where despair tried to crush them, resolve built like a wall. Each step forward was met with shrieks, a desperate push against the tide of darkness. As they reclaimed their strength from the depths of fear, the entity grew more frantic, twisting violently, spitting out dark images that echoed their pasts. "You cannot kill the truth," it bellowed. But the truth was no longer a weapon against them, it became their shield. As they charged forward, hands clenched, a scream tore through the air, but it didn't belong to any of them. The darkness shrieked, recoiling as they illuminated the shadows with the light of their unity. But in that primal fight against inner demons, they had no idea something worse loomed, hidden in the corners of the dark. Somewhere deeper, a pulse throbbed, waiting for them to turn away just long enough. What other horrors awaited them in the recesses they dared not look? Would they triumph over this darkness or unleash something far greater than their fears? The shadows shrieked as if in pain, churning and writhing away from the light. Mike felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by an inexplicable dread. The deeper they pushed into the dark, the more he sensed a presence lurking, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Keep your eyes forward," he warned, anger fueling his courage. But the voices still swirled around them, a haunting chorus that promised deeper truths from the past. Every whisper felt like nails scraping against their souls, grinding their resolve to dust. "I can't take it." Mrs. Andrews clutched at her temples, eyes wide with horror. "It knows us. It knows everything. It's trying to turn us against each other." Sarah yelled back, filled with desperation. "We can't let it." As they pressed on, aligned as a single entity against the encroaching tide, the air around them grew colder. Each breath felt like inhaling icy daggers. The shadows twisted tighter, pressing into the group, searching for weakness. Mike felt Sarah squeeze his hand, but her grip was trembling. "What if we can't do this?" she murmured, her voice trembling as fear seeped back in like a dark fog. "What if we can't change?" "Then we'll die trying," Mike spat back, trying to inject a spark of determination into the chilling atmosphere. But doubt clawed at him too, and he could feel the edges of fear starting to close in, suffocating. Suddenly, the shadows shifted violently, bursting into chaotic shapes around them. They took form, twisting into grotesque images of their past failures, friends they had abandoned, promises they had broken, moments where silence outweighed words. Each image stung with the familiarity of anguish, tearing at their hearts like a frayed rope. "Stop!" Mike shouted into the void, forcing his voice past the rising screams. "You don't control us." The darkness recoiled and absorbed his words, atmosphere thickening, heavy like oil. Then it parted to reveal a figure, a darker silhouette, almost human but infinitely worse. A smirk stretched across its featureless face, lips glistening with a sickly sheen. "Welcome home." The figure's voice was a sibilant whisper, each word dripping with venom. "You thought you could escape? You can't even face what lurks inside." Rage ignited in Mike, eclipsing fear momentarily. "We face it together." With a sudden surge, he lunged forward, dragging Sarah with him. They tore through the darkness, eclipsing fading memories that screamed at them to turn back. The weight of guilt pressed down like an anchor, but determination flared in their hearts, a molten fire rebelling against despair. Behind them, the shadows piled higher, writhing in protest as they surged forward. Mike felt the warm hum of unity strengthen within him, an energy growing as each member of their group stood shoulder to shoulder, refusing to be consumed. But just as they thought they had gained the upper hand, the darkness exploded into thousands of shards, piercing through their collective front. Each shard was a memory, each one striking a different, deeply seated fear within them. "Don't look back," Sarah urged, fighting against the turmoil of memories. "Keep moving. We can't let it win." But the figure moved effortlessly among the shards, a puppet master guiding the memories, pushing deeper into Mike's mind. "You've forgotten the price of facing your past. You're not brave, you're foolish." The black swarm gathered around them, looming larger, tightening as they pressed onward, shadows stretching like fingers trying to ensnare them. The suffocating darkness seemed alive, breathing down their necks, threatening to drown them in despair. Then came the scream, no, a wail. A sorrowful lament that froze the air, chilling them to the bone. "Return, return to us," it echoed, reverberating off the walls of their souls. A flicker of movement caught Mike's eye. It wasn't just shadows anymore, figures were emerging in the chaos, fainter but more defined. Faces he had thought long gone, lovers, friends, long-lost family, each with eyes that dripped despair, begging, pleading, "Run. Mr. Johnson!" shouted, and they instinctively turned to flee, a primal instinct pulling them away from the raw, unrelenting pain. But the darkness pulled them back, tendrils of sorrow wrapping around their limbs, each step heavier than the last. "Do you think you can escape what you owe?" the figure taunted, curling into their ears like poison. "You belong with them. You can't break their grip." As they tore through the swirling shadows, needing space to breathe, Mike's heart raced, but he knew they had a chance. All they had to do was face what lay ahead. But in the depths of despair, he wondered, what shadow had they yet to confront? What unspeakable truth would they uncover that could change everything they knew? Would they dare take the next step? The air was thick with despair as they stumbled, hearts pounding like war drums. Shadows swirled closer, each moment stretching into an eternal struggle against the weight of their own darkness. The faces they haunted Mike, each one stirring a memory he wished he could forget. They flickered like whispers at the edge of his mind, taunting him with what he'd lost. "Keep moving. Don't listen to them." Sarah's voice cracked, but it carried an undeniable strength. She pulled Mike closer as if to shield him from the gathering shadows. The others followed, a desperate train of terrified souls, but fear was beginning to gnaw at their resolve. The darkness rippled all around, elongating, thinning until it seemed like tendrils were reaching for their throats. "You think you can escape?" the figure whispered again, almost playfully, like a cat batting at a trapped mouse. "You run from yourselves. But you are tied to the past. It anchors you." Mrs. Andrews gasped as a sharp point of memory stabbed through her. Her son's laughter turned to silence, his face twisting in sorrow. The image danced just out of reach, mocking her. "No. I need to fight it." She thrashed against the shadows, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Don't give in." Mike shouted, but even as he spoke, doubt slithered through his own heart. What if this was truly hopeless? The shadows lunged closer, he could feel their icy breath through the fading warmth of unity they had fought to keep. "Why do you fight? You are meant to be part of this," the figure taunted, gliding mere inches away, its voice a hissing echo through the hurricane of their pain. "Remember how it felt. The comfort of the darkness." As they ran, they stumbled upon a clearing, a painful silence descending. The air felt different here, thick with lost words and unshakable fear. Mike glanced around, recognizing that this was once a place they had cherished, a schoolyard where laughter had filled the air. A place now cloaked in shadows, twisted and contorted. From within the shadows, familiar figures began to coalesce. Friends they had abandoned in their darkest hour, each one with eyes filled with accusations. "You left us, you let us fall." "Stop. You don't control us. Mike screamed, his voice steadying in the face of terror. But guilt gnawed at him like a rat at a corpse, and he worried his own resolve was slowly crumbling. Why fight us? A figure stepped forward, a girl from their past, a friend lost too soon. Join us. Embrace what you truly are. Don't listen. Sarah cried, tugging at Mike with strength he hadn't known she possessed. Stay focused. Suddenly, the memories swelled into a tidal wave, crashing over them. Each figure reached out with scrabbling hands, each voice becoming a cacophony that drowned out reason. The air buzzed with sorrow, regret, and the weight of what could have been. Their footing faltered. Shadows entwined around their legs, pulling them downward. This is your home. The figure shrieked, laughter turning to madness as it danced along the edges of their vision. You are lost. You cannot escape. Mike could see Sarah struggle against the tendrils, her face twisted in fury and fear. He felt his own heart seize. We can't give in. He shouted, but the scream turned into panic, reverberating back at them. The tension reached a breaking point. They had to choose to fight back now, but how could they fight shadows that were nothing more than reflections of their deepest fears? Face it. Sarah shouted, her eyes wild with desperation, and then, with a sudden clarity, Mike realized something important. The shadows gained power by the disarray of their hearts. They weren't just attacking, they were searching for cracks, for weakness. Together. He heard himself roar as he gripped Sarah's hand tightly. We're stronger together. With a visceral cry, they joined hands, forming a line, a lifeline against the encroaching dread. But just as hope flared, the figure became grotesquely large, its grin elongating, a harbinger of doom. Did you think that would work? It sneered, as the shadows roared louder, an anguished fury. Reaching for them like hungry wolves. What would it take to vanquish the past? What terrifying truth lurked at the heart of their fear? Mike held his breath, feeling the weight of history pressing down. Would they break free, or would the darkness claim them at last? A ghastly wail erupted from the shadows, an unnatural howl that shook the very ground beneath them. The once recognizable faces of their friends shifted and twisted, becoming horrid parodies of the people they had known. Mike's heart raced, each beat echoing like thunder in his ears. We can't let them take us. Sarah yelled, her grip tightening painfully on his hand, but as they stood together, they felt their energy dwindling. The shadows coiled tighter around their legs, the weight of guilt trying to pull them down. Each accusation was a dagger. You changed. You left us. Echoed a voice, one they never thought they'd hear again. Tommy, the boy everyone adored. His mouth moved in the twisted mockery of a smile. It was pure agony. Shut up. You're dead. Mike shouted, rage boiling over. His voice held no power. In the end, they all felt that sting of betrayal. Was that really how they felt? The specter of Tommy twisted into something monstrous, its skin waxy and pallid, the eyes hollow voids. You think you can fight me? It lunged, the dark tendrils surging forth, reclaiming their victims. Embrace your failures. They are all you have left. Mike was losing ground. Desperation surged within him, threatening to drown him in despair. The memories threatened to consume him. Each was a ghost clawing him from behind, ripping him apart. No. No. I won't let you, he screamed, but even as he shouted, he felt the strength begin to ebb. Focus on what matters. Sarah urged, face pale but determined, the fire in her eyes like a beacon in the oppressive blackness. The darkness shifted, swirling like a living thing, pulsing with a hunger that made Mike's skin crawl. He didn't just see shadows anymore, he felt them. They were him, and he was them, a dizzying reflection of every choice he had ever made that led them here. Sarah. He gasped, though his voice cracked. Her worry reflected in her eyes, a shared moment of understanding passing between them despite the chaos, and then came a thought: the fights, the arguments, the times they let fear and anger dictate their choices. Each could be a stepping stone, a lantern in the abyss if they cared to confront them. Our strength comes from facing it together, Mike said, desperation giving way to determination. We can't let the past control us. The shadows momentarily hesitated. It was as if the dark figure contemplated what had been said. Those lingered on uncertainty. Then face your truths. It roared, and the cacophony amplified, shrieks mingling with their own fears. Your flaws are not just whispers, they are thunder. They will always be with you. Together, they stood firm, hands clasped tighter than ever. No! Sarah shouted back, her voice fierce now. It's time for you to let go. You don't know us. The figures of the past convulsed as the shadows tightened, furious at being challenged. Memories washed over them, echoes of laughter, the comfort of companionship, and the warmth of hope. Mike dug deep, feeling the familiarity of what they fought for. They weren't just fighting shadows, they were reclaiming their lives. That's right. He said, feeling a surge of power bloom within. We're not alone. An electric moment enveloped the air, and light flickered at the edges of their grasp. It felt powerful, like a phoenix rising from ashes. But the malevolence of the shadows wasn't snuffed out so easily. The figure lunged forth, grotesque and furious. No! You cannot escape the darkness. With furious resolve, they channeled their memories not to wallow in sorrow, but to remind themselves that they were more than their past. Feel the fear. Mike shouted, energy surging through their arms, casting the shadows back inch by inch. But just as it seemed they might break free, the grotesque face of their tormentor lunged forth, the darkness roaring, swallowing their light. Freedom lies beyond the shadows if you dare to go. The promise felt hollow, yet the threat was undeniable. Mike's heart dropped as he realized just how close they truly were to their own demise. Would their new strength be enough? Or would the darkness swallow them whole, leaving nothing but echoes behind? As the shadows lunged again, they braced for another assault, their fate hanging in a precarious balance. What terrifying truths awaited them just beyond this primal battle? The shadows twisted and writhed, a sentient storm ready to engulf them. Mike's heart thudded like a war drum, each beat thumping with dread and determination. The air crackled, thick with energy as they held tightly to one another, a living wall of resistance against the darkness. With a shared breath filled with conviction, they steeled themselves for one final push. Let us take back everything. Mike shouted, a raw surge of defiance rising within him. As they surged forward, a blur of light erupted from their united front, illuminating the suffocating darkness in blinding brilliance. For the first time, the shadows hesitated, recoiling as if burned. Now! Sarah cried, her voice piercing through the cacophony, igniting the strength within them. Together, they allowed every painful memory, every whispered fear, to fuel their resolve. We are not defined by our failures. Mike shouted into the void, the declaration exploding from his chest like a crash of thunder. We accept the past, but we control our future. The shadows trembled, faces within them squirming, agony writhing among their features. They were not just facing a dark entity, they were confronting pieces of themselves, bitter, resentful, and lost fragments of their souls. But now they understood the power of unity, of acceptance. With synchronized energy, they pressed through the swirling mass of shadows, casting light upon chilling visions that flickered like broken glass. Memories wove through the air, reliving moments that had weighed so heavily, not just the betrayals but also laughter, love, and the bittersweet memories they had forged. Each instant sparked a burst of energy. We want to let you take us. Mrs. Andrews shouted, her spirit reigniting as memories of joy flared, illuminating her face, and behind them, a chorus of voices joined in, rallying friends who had once felt abandoned, hopes that had dimmed but didn't die. We stand together. They echoed, building momentum, each pulse of light pushing against the consuming dark. The figure, now monstrous and furious, snarled. This unity is a fallacy. You're still bound by your history. You think this strength will free you? Its voice was mocking, but even it trembled under the burgeoning light. History is not a chain. Sarah screamed, the electricity sparking in the air around them. It's a foundation. With tears streaming down their cheeks, and laughter mingling with sorrow, the group unleashed their memories, igniting bursts of brilliance that exploded outwards, fracturing the darkness into fragments of nothing. With each released memory, the shadows lost their grip, their forms twisting and fading. Feel the love. Remember the good. Mike bellowed, pushing deeper, urging them onward. Embrace your past and rise stronger. Their renewed focus acted as a beacon, drawing in the light against the darkness. One by one, pieces of darkness evaporated, surrendering to the brilliance of their unity, until finally with an earth-shattering roar, the darkness unraveled. The grotesque figure writhed in protest, but it was consumed by the very light it sought to extinguish. No! It howled, a final plea echoing into the void. In that electrifying moment, they burst through a chasm where light met dark and stepped forward into an expanse that shimmered with overwhelming bright clarity. Gasping, they emerged onto familiar ground, their neighborhood quiet, serene, bathed in the calming light of early dawn. We did it! Sarah whispered, heart pounding with relief and disbelief. Breathless, they stood together on their porch, clutching each other as morning sunshine filtered through the trees, igniting the world around them. The storm had faded like a bad dream, leaving behind the tender remnants of what once was. All those shadows, we faced them, Mike said, a calm settling over him. Each memory was a stitch in the fabric of who they were, formed from both the light and dark. The neighborhood bore a reassuring tranquility, whispers of the storm now nothing more than memories. But it was a testimony to their fight, a reminder of the shadows they had faced. Lily, her youthful spirit rekindled, looked at her parents with astonished wonder. We can move forward now, right? Together? Of course, Mike reassured her, smiling through the pain that still clung to them but now felt lighter. They held each other close, guardians against the dark whispers that may still remain. But they had become a fortified band, stronger than the shadows they once feared. Let us rebuild, Sarah added, the light of hope shining in her eyes. Let us keep moving forward. Together, they turned away from the memories that had haunted them. They were not merely surviving, they were thriving, stepping confidently into the future, weaving a tapestry of light and resilience that would echo through their lives forevermore. As the sun rose, they felt renewed. The nightmares were no longer their masters, they held the keys. Peace settled around them like the warmth of a sturdy blanket, and they could finally breathe free, but remember, what lurked in the darkness may yet awaken. If you want to know how their story continues, don't wait. You need to subscribe now so you won't miss what lies ahead, because there are more exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm with the love this story deserves. And flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about what comes next. Share this journey with at least 5 friends who need to hear this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the word.